823rd round of council, and of course today the Lifestyle and Community Committee. Before we get going, thought it might be nice to acknowledge the arrival of our new director, Mr. Elton Twine. Yeah, we all know Elton from T&I days. I think he provided good counsel during those meetings, and I'm sure we'll have the same at our committee. And of course, we haven't had an opportunity to thank the outgoing director, Alison Ewens. I'm sure there'll be a time and a moment for that. But it's a good committee, it does good work, and I'm sure we're in good hands with you, Elton. So really great to have you here. And to all of our managers and team, thank you so much for being a steady hand and lending your institutional knowledge. It's great to have you here as well. Today we have a few items. Some are notionally procedural, some deal with substantive issues, including our Naturally GC program and the Nerang Country Paradise Parklands. Councillors, item 3, I'd propose that we star, unless there were any questions concerning the last minutes. Let's start that one. Conflict of interest declarations, we will leave unstarred. Councillor Peter Young has 2 there to make. 5.1, were there any questions concerning that item, councillors? No, happy to leave that as starred. 6.1, local area works program additions.
Very simple question.
Yeah, sure thing. So,
More of an administrative thing than anything.
do you think it might lead to any form of a change?
Only on page 26 it talks about Skyline Terrace, Reedy Creek. I think it's technically Burleigh Heads or West Burleigh, but Reedy Creek is kind of west of the highway.
Yep. Pauline, can
So
you confirm?
I think it's just a matter of, it's an administrative
A little
thing,
typo.
like a typo.
Okay. So, Director, perhaps in the next iteration of 824, we'll change that? Great. Thank you, Councillor Tozer. Councillors, we do have presentations on 6.2 and 7.1, so I'd like to give the officers an opportunity to present those. We'll leave those unstarred. Is there any objection to dealing with 3, 5.1 and 6.1 on block now? No? Would someone like to move that? Councillor Gates, seconded by Councillor Tozer. We'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? All those against? That is carried. So thank you, councillors. That deals with item 3, 5.1 and 6.1. Councillor Peter Young, I understand you'd like to make 2 declarations concerning item 7.1.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman and councillors. Thanks for your acknowledgement this morning. And I do have 2 declarations in regard to the Country Paradise item. They are before us. The first one is in relation to Mr. Mark Tierney, who's currently the president of the Country Paradise Association. He's a personal friend of mine and has been for about 25 years. Apart from that, well, that's it. I've got a long-standing friendship with Mr. Tierney, and he knows that my overwhelming responsibility is and always has been the broader public interest, and the matter before us is of great importance to the community, so I'm seeking to be involved in the participation, in the debate and ultimately the voting on the matter, Chairman.
Tony, could you confirm, so through you, Director, to Tony, could you confirm whether Country Paradise Parklands, is it a district level park? Or where does it sit in the hierarchy?
Good question, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it is a district level park, yes.
Okay, so we would expect that it would serve the interests of a significant number of people in the local government area. That's what it's designed to do.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, thanks for the answer. Did anyone have a procedural motion you'd like to move? Councillor Tozer.
I'd move that Councillor Peter Young should participate in the decision despite the conflict of interest, because the public interest exceeds the importance of the interest is disclosed. What's the word? There's a standard wording we use when we say.
I think we've got some pro forma words, do we?
Just when it's just a benefit of the councillors participating outweighs any. Yes, that's great. That's good.
Would you mind reading that out in full, Councillor Tozer?
Of course, I move that Councillor Peter Young may participate in the decision despite the councillor's conflict of interest because the benefit of Councillor Young's participation in decision-making in relation to this matter outweighs any perceived bias arising from their conflict of interest.
Councillors, I'm happy to open that to discussion. I'll look for a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Lacastra. Any further questions, councillors, to Councillor Young? No? All right. Councillor Gates?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chairman. I was just saying I don't know what the previous status has been regarding close personal relationships, because clearly 25 years is a long time to have a friendship, and I just can't recall, and we don't have anyone here to give advice on that, do we? But I just...
Is the question whether it becomes a prescribed interest?
Yes.
Or age? No. Time, it's the status or the nature of the relationship.
Okay.
Yeah, my recollection is the friendship doesn't trigger a move to prescribed. It sits with declarable, but perhaps between now and full council we can seek some advice from the
I mean, don't get me
General
wrong,
Counsel.
I think that there's value in Councillor Young remaining in the room, but I just wanted to be sure of the history.
I think that's worth doing. For my own part, my decision to support the motion rests more on the fact that we're dealing with a district level park that would seek to, which would give an interest to a significant number of people in the local government area, in my view, then trigger an exemption as an ordinary business matter. That's my thinking in supporting it. Obviously, that's not the formal words on the screen, but for the purposes of putting that on the public record, that's my view. Councillors, unless there's any objection, I might put that to a vote. All those in favour? I have to call a division on that. Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Belden-Lumsden, Councillor Lacastra, Councillor Tozer, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Vorster. Those against? Any abstentions? And of course, Councillor Young did not vote, but it's not a committee member. So we'll just wait for that to be recorded, Councillor Young, and then we'll move to your second declaration.
Thank you, Chairman. So my second declaration is along the same lines. It deals with a member of the committee, of the Management Committee, Mr Peter Cardona, who's been a long-standing friend of mine. I should add that both of these gentlemen are volunteers on the committee. They derive no personal benefit from their association or their membership of the association, and they work very hard. I've had no private discussions with either of those gentlemen about this matter. I've, of course, discussed the matter with them as members of the committee and along with council officers. So just to be clear, the name of the related party here is Mr Peter Cardona. He's a friend of mine. He's a member of the Nerang Country Paradise Association. I'm seeking to participate in making a decision about the matter because although I have a long-standing friendship with him, he has always known that my overwhelming responsibility is the broader public interest, and this is a matter of importance to the greater community. Indeed, the park is a district park, and the report talks about it being beefed up so it meets that regional parkland designation ultimately. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Young. Again, councillors, let's first open up to questions in case there are any for Councillor Young. No? Would someone like to move procedural motion? Councillor Tozer. Moved. So we can use the same formal words. Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Tozer, and as was the case earlier, seconded by Councillor Lacastra. Councillors, any further questions? Potential speakers against that procedural motion? No, I will put that to a vote. All those in favour of the procedural motion? Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Belden-Lumsden, Councillor Lacastra, Councillor Tozer, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Vorster. Those against? Councillor Peter Young, none, and Councillor Peter Young did not vote, but of course he's not a member of the committee. You did not attempt to vote, did you?
Thank you, Chairman. Thanks, committee.
No worries. Thank you, Councillor Young. And look, councillors, that deals with item 4, unless there are any other conflicts of interest that might need to be dealt with today. No. All right, wonderful. We can now move to item 6.2, which is our Naturally GC program. Our presenter is, of course, Soraya Robinson. Our manager, Tony German. How are you, Tony? You're already there, mate. And Dr. Tim. Oh, it snuck in the back. You're the only one dressed as a NAMU team member today, by the way. Councillors, I understand we're in for a real treat today. We have a short video, a presentation, and it's Soraya's first time, can you believe it, behind the microphone in the chamber. So we'll be gentle, Soraya, and we're now firmly in your hands.
I'll just wait for the presentation to pop up here. Thank you. So as mentioned, my name's Soraya Robinson for those who haven't met me, and I'm the greening officer here with the City of Gold Coast. I actually started in 2005 as a trainee with Bushland Maintenance, but for the last 14 years I have been delivering our Naturally GC community environment programs amongst other environmental projects. So just a little bit about the Natural Areas Management Unit for those that may not know. We are affectionately known as NEMU, and we are responsible for the management and conservation of around 13,000 hectares of the city's conservation estate, covering around 800 parks and reserves. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Naturally GC program. So most of you are aware of it. However, we just wanted to provide a little bit more information citywide about what we're actually doing. So the program is the city's leading community environmental education program. It has two components, so environmental education, but also the land care, which is our bush care and land care groups and our tree planting. The education part of the program was formed in 2008, but the land care program has been running since 1999 under the previous name Beaches to Bushland Land Care. So they're both really well-loved community programs that have been running for quite some time. We deliver the program through partnering with our local communities, so such as our land care and bush care groups, local businesses and our not-for-profits, but we also promote citywide opportunities from other external environmental organisations that might receive funding or grant opportunities from the city. So the aim of the program is to connect the community to nature. So we do this through two ways. So providing on-ground action and conservation activities that the community can join in on, and then of course raising awareness of the environmental values of the Gold Coast. So a lot of the time when people think about the Gold Coast, they often think about the beaches, the high rises or the development, but a lot of people might overlook how biodiverse our city actually is. So we are living in a biodiversity hotspot, and we really want to raise awareness with not just the residents of the city, but the newcomers that come to our city as well. Here's just an overview of the city vision. So you can see that we fit under the naturally unique. So our city values its natural environment that gives us a lifestyle like no other. So the Naturally GC program is fulfilling one of these. So a lot of the activities, so we do everything from citizen science, so whether that's taking community out into our parks and looking at what flora and fauna we have in the parks that we might not be aware of. We also do festivals such as our Naturally Gold Coast Festival, and we also deliver adults and kids workshops. So whether the community want to learn about what native plants they might want to plant in their back garden, all the way down to kids workshops such as guided walks, as you can see in the corner here at Coomera Lakelands with the school holiday program. We also deliver the tree planting and the land care, which I'm going to be going into a little bit more detail about. But then we also promote recreation, getting people out into our parks, enjoying our natural areas, and also promoting sustainable nature-based recreation. So what we can actually do in our parks apart from conservation, and then Indigenous cultural heritage as well. So some of the key activities that we did want to highlight in the 22-23 program are listed here. So we've partnered with Hoppo Ferries. So this is a city first where we are delivering workshops out on the Broadwater. We're taking the community out with us. They're going to be learning about things like dugongs, turtles, seagrass, but we're also going to be visiting Curlew Island, where there's the eastern curlew, which is a threatened bird that migrates from Russia all the way to Australia. So we're going to be educating the public about the importance of these spaces. We're also going to be doing nighttime surveys with greater gliders. So this is another threatened species that we have in the city, and there's a range of different conservation parks that provide habitat for these. So we're partnering with Wildlife Queensland to do surveys with the community, looking for these greater gliders at nighttime and getting some really important data and information for the city. A night at the gardens. So this is at the Botanic Gardens. So often a lot of people probably don't think of the Botanic Gardens as a spot for conservation. However, it is. We know there's a lot of wildlife that utilise this area central to the city for refuge. So we're doing nighttime guided tours with kids and adults as well to see what animals are utilising the park. And the next one you may have seen recently is the infrared fauna cameras. Through mayoral funding, we were provided 14 infrared cameras that we are setting up within our conservation areas at night time and trying to spot what animals might be utilising the park that we weren't necessarily aware of, or picking up animals such as the koalas that mostly move around at night time. The Green Day Out tree planting. So this one's going to be held on the mighty Albert River this year. We're looking to do anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 trees. This will be an event that we're looking to rotate around the city as well into other conservation parks and other divisions. And then our Naturally Gold Coast Festival and the Wildlife Festival. So the Naturally Gold Coast Festival is our city's key environment festival, and that has historically been held in Robina. And the Wildlife Festival, which we're going to be hosting in Upper Coomera, is its second year running and is all about connecting our community to native wildlife and learning about how unique the fauna that we have here on the Gold Coast is. We really just wanted to highlight the land care program. So this is something you might see us out there planting trees and things like that, but we just wanted to highlight our actual partnerships through the land care and what we actually achieve as a city. So we partner with 11 different bush care and land care groups across the city, but we also host school and corporate tree planting events during the week. So we invite school groups and corporate businesses to come and plant trees with us in our conservation area. But we also facilitate our community tree planting days. So a lot of you might be familiar with things like our koala tree planting days, National Tree Day, Threatened Species Week and things like that. This is something that I really wanted to highlight. We have done a lot of benchmarking and not just SEQ but also across Australia, and we're one of the only cities that actually 100% fund land care works within the city. So often land care groups or bush care groups have to seek funding from external organisations or apply for grants to be able to deliver conservation activities within our parks. However, through the city's Naturally GC Land Care program, we fund all of these works and also through divisional funding as well. In addition to this, we're also provided a resource, which is through me and the rest of the team, where we actually make it a lot easier for volunteers to want to play a part in caring for these areas. So we do things like augering all of the holes, purchasing all of the trees, organising watering, organising all the promotion and marketing, registration of the event, and then most importantly, we have internal bush regeneration teams that are skilled and qualified to do the maintenance of these projects to make sure that they are successful and our volunteers are getting a really good experience. Some of the key outcomes of the land care program. So native vegetation cover. So the city have a target of 51% native vegetation cover. Currently we're at 50.55%. So this program is enhancing that and contributing to that data. Biodiversity. So often when we start a new site, it might be quite low biodiversity. It might be filled with environmental weeds, but through these partnerships and skilled teams, we're increasing biodiversity and our native species within the city. And of course, habitat. So we really want to provide a habitat for our native animals and of course, animals such as our iconic koala, which is also listed as threatened. And then community involvement and social as well. So we want to provide a platform for the community to help care for their natural areas, but we also want to provide outcomes for social and mental health as well. So land care is one of the ways that we can do this. Education. So the program provides an opportunity for residents and visitors to learn all about our natural areas through city offices and education on the day. And then, of course, partnerships between local government and community. It's essential that we partner with community on these activities and involve them in caring for our natural areas so that they take that forward and value these parks. Instead of me talking about the program, we've produced, and I'll just let you know, this was just in-house. This is vision from myself and Jessica, our other Naturally GC officer, and it's just going to showcase a really short highlight of our program, what we do with the program and what the community love about the program. So we'll hit play, it goes for about 4 minutes.
A new forest will soon emerge at the Spit. The Mayor and Deputy Premier Stephen Miles planting the first two of 350,000 native trees, which will improve biodiversity and become a natural attraction.
The thing that I love most about the Naturally Gold Coast program is showcasing some of our rare and threatened species and their habitat to the wider Gold Coast audience that may not normally know about them or appreciate them.
So more native birds can come and nest in trees like this.
Well, for starters, it's about planting trees, and with where the world is currently headed, we need to do something with the environment, and definitely it gets the community involved as well, and people from all over around, and it's doing something that is genuinely helping this area and helping the city and helping the world overall. So it is a very important thing to do.
I reckon the Naturally GC program is awesome. It brings together environment and nature lovers from all over the Gold Coast, and not just people who already love the environment, but those who are just getting into it, which is absolutely fantastic.
Well, I love the fact that, you know, we can get out there, plant trees, and every month we're improving our environment.
So at Griffith University, we lecture about the value of nature to people, connecting to nature and all the things it does for the community and for individuals. And the work of the Naturally GC in the council is critical to this, because what it's doing is making sure those natural areas are kept in tip-top condition and making sure people can engage with that nature through the community outreach.
To go back. So yeah, that was just a little video that we produced. So we do a lot of content when we're out at these events, and there's a lot of great stories to share. So we also wanted to just highlight some of our Naturally GC achievements. So as a team, we actually feel like we're achieving a lot every single day, and often a lot of the things that people don't see are behind the scenes. In 21-22, however, we had 22,000 people come and join us for Naturally GC activities. We did this across 245 events. We hosted 55 partnerships, whether that's between local land care groups or not-for-profits or businesses. And we delivered 4 holiday programs, which most of you would be aware how popular that they are and how quickly they do book out. In terms of land care, usually pre-COVID and with the weather the last year, we normally average around planting 60,000 trees. We have around 3,000 volunteers that join us every year, but then we have 400 regular members. So these are members that show up every single month that regularly want to volunteer with us. You can see some of the photos here. So this is from Austinville Land Care Group. And just while I'm on the subject of this, I just really wanted to highlight and publicly acknowledge Wal Mayer, who's in the bottom here on the left. Wal was recently awarded the National Land Care Award down in Sydney. So Wal has partnered with us through Austinville Land Care since 2005. And that's his wonderful group there. But we just wanted to acknowledge his hard work and the role that he's played here on the Gold Coast, and in particular in the Austinville Valley. This is our growth here in the program. So you can see in 2008 and 9, we hosted only 84 events. We were only engaging 560 people, and our tree planting numbers were only 6,580. You can see in 21-22, we've tripled those events to 245, 22,000 people. Our tree planting numbers were slightly down due to the weather, with 34,344 trees. In 22-23, so our current year, we're already delivering 350 activities across the city. We know the participant numbers are going to be much higher than this, and also the tree planting numbers already were on target to reach that figure. We really wanted to showcase and highlight, most of you have probably been out with us planting trees or onto site to see some of the differences that we are actually making with partnerships. but we really wanted to highlight and visually showcase these. So up here on the left, we have Currumbin Creek Care Group. So in 2008, you can see the top photo. It was relatively void of native vegetation. It had camphor laurels, which are an environmental weed lining the creek, a weedy understory and erosion within the creek. And through a partnership with Currumbin Creek Care Group and also with teams of skilled bush regenerators, we have restored that from the above to the below. So it's now a thriving ecosystem. This is 1.5 kilometres of area along Currumbin Creek. So it's really made a significant impact to that catchment area. The image on the other side there is Regatta Waters Park in Oxenford. So this park was previously a cattle farm, so it was under a lease through council. And with the partnership with the Coomera River Group and assistance from other community groups such as Scouts, we've been doing various tree plantings in this particular area. You can see the before photo there just in 2017 and the after difference that's already made in 2022. So these are areas as well that do have erosion issues along the creek. So by planting these trees, we're hoping to improve any erosion issues that we might have along these sections of river.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah. The Currumbin Creek, for example, is that what we would describe as being like closer to its natural, untouched state, and it had been cleared in that top photo, like for dairy farming and stuff like that? Is that what?
So yes, through the chair, yeah, it is. So it was actually previously an old dairy farm, but also quarrying. So then through the Eco Village development, this middle bit was handed over to council. So when we came on board, it should have looked like this. So we're restoring it back to its original state. It should have looked like this. It didn't, but through the partnerships and then our skilled natural areas team, we've been able to restore it to what it should be. So existing native vegetation there. So it's incredibly biodiverse along here. We also have platypus that call this area home. So it's really important that we do these works along these areas. But yeah, this is exactly what we want to be seeing our conservation area parks looking like. So it's a really fantastic before and after image to really showcase what we're achieving here at the city.
Can we share that?
What was that, sorry?
Are we able to share that? It's open session.
I can give you guys any of these pictures. So we have before and afters of pretty much all of your divisional areas of the projects that we're working on, not just with community, but also our restoration teams. So this one here is probably of interest to you. So this is Austinville Conservation Area. And instead of just the before and after photo, we also wanted to put the aerial image in here as well. So you can see in 2013, so this is on the upper reaches of Mudgebar Creek. Again, void of most native vegetation, incredibly weedy. And then the below photo, which was snapped just recently. So this is after a skilled restoration work. So we have 2 teams working on this site, so 2 internal restoration teams, contractors, and then we've also got the Austinville Valley Landcare Group working the creek line in partnership with us. So you can see such a difference from when the city purchased the land with the house pad on there, lots of open areas, and then of course the after image, which has been revegetated, but this is through multiple partnerships, including our own internal staff that work out here weekly doing this work. This is another one I really wanted to highlight. So this really showcases the importance and that we can actually do recreation with conservation. So this is Schuster Park down in Tallebudgera Valley. For those of you that might not be aware of it, it is a highly utilised dog off-leash area. It's a great spot for horse riding, bushwalking and also bike riding. But at the same time, it's also a koala corridor and it's a koala hotspot between Burleigh and Elanora. So through partnerships with Elanora Bushcare, grant funding through the National Landcare Program and our internal teams working this site, we've planted around 90,000 trees here. That project actually started in 2011, so we've planted quite a few trees in this park and we're still balancing those recreation outcomes with the conservation and providing a corridor for the koalas and a safe refuge for them to be utilising the park. So where to from here? So we just really wanted to highlight that these programs are incredibly high demand. Often a lot of our workshops, they are booking out. We're constantly under pressure from local organisations and community groups wanting to do more with the city. So we are looking to do an internal review of the program. So this will include looking at resources and how best we resource the program to make it sustainable. So most of you have probably known for most of the time I have been primarily working solo. We have another resource with us now, but we're looking to the future to see what else can we do to help support the program and making it more sustainable. And then the last one is increasing community awareness of the program. So while we do have good numbers coming along to our programs, we have a really high rate of volunteers that come with us. We're really looking at ways that we can promote this better to the city and to residents as well. So looking at platforms that we've put in applications for, potentially a Facebook page and things like that for our program, so that we can get this information out to our volunteers really quickly and highlight the outcomes that we're achieving with volunteers, how people can get involved in environmental programs, and sharing this information on a regular basis. There's some really good information and pictures, as you can see from our before and after photos. It's really endless on how we can be promoting what the city does and how we do things better to the Gold Coast community. Just before I finish up as well, I just really wanted to acknowledge the staff within the Natural Areas Management Unit, from our conservation planners to our rangers and our bush regenerators. They're doing absolutely fantastic world-class work. It often goes unnoticed. It can sometimes be behind the scenes, but we are leading the way in many ways in terms of conservation and what we're doing here on the Gold Coast. I also wanted to thank the councillors and also the Mayor for providing funding to make these programs happen and supporting these along the way. It really makes a difference. I'm incredibly proud and passionate about these programs. It's fantastic that I've been able to come here today to present these, but it's also wonderful that we can provide these opportunities for our community to get involved in help caring for our natural areas and learning more about how special and unique the Gold Coast is. Thanks.
Thanks, Soraya. So some questions, Councillor Gates?
Thanks very much, Chairman, and through you to Soraya. I've had a request in place for a little while adjacent to a property at Blacks Road at Willowvale, where there are some erosion issues and a lot of it needs revegetation along the creek bank. In representing Division 1, I had a great association with Northeast Albert Landcare, but I don't know, do they come down as far as Willowvale if I should want to initiate a tree planting?
Through the chair, so I can answer a little bit of that. So the Northeast Albert Landcare Group is predominantly focused in Ormo. I'm not aware of that particular request, but it can obviously come through to city offices. So we can look at that in a number of different ways. So whether that's something that's done internally through our skilled teams or whether it's something we look at for the future for the Landcare program. So we don't necessarily need a group to be able to do tree planting activities within the conservation parks as well.
Okay, I'll follow up offline. Thank you.
Councillor Young and then Councillor Owen-Jones.
Thanks, Chairman. A question through you. Soraya, we were at an event recently and I think you said to a member of the public that there's no cat's claw creeper in the public estate across the city. I just want to confirm that publicly now.
Yeah, so through the chair, so there is some cat's claw within the city's conservation parks, but we are working extremely hard to control that. So in the Nerang area in particular, it was a big issue within that catchment area. Since obviously helped through divisional funding as well, restoring areas like Piggott's Park out at Guanabar Reserve and Nerang, it's very limited within our city's conservation estate, and it's something that's been high on our agenda for some time. So, yeah.
That's great to have that clarification. Thanks, Chairman.
Thanks, Councillor Young. Councillor Owen-Jones.
Thanks. Through you, Soraya, firstly, your work's really, really good, and thanks for coming in this morning. I'm interested in how we could potentially improve the communication to the general public about how it is city funded and exclusively city funded. So I know, like in Regatta Waters, we planted tens of thousands and like a kilometre, and Steve and his group do a really good job, but I just think that there's some way that we can maybe make it more obvious that it's actually the volunteers are planting, but it's the city funding and the city drilling the holes and the city watering and all of those things. So I have the problem where there's at least another level of government that turns up and never acknowledges the good work of the city ever. So I think we just need to somehow tweak that, and Steve's really good at it, but it's pretty annoying.
Yeah. So again, through the chair, so this is something that we have raised as we do see the value, and I know there's rules and regulations around it, of our Naturally GC program or Naturally Gold Coast program having a Facebook page for our program, we know that we can actively get this information out there. We see the same things that you're seeing, and there's a lot of hard work that goes in behind all of these programs and activities that make them possible, and then also city funding. So we believe we've been doing everything that we can, but we think if we had another platform such as Facebook for the Naturally Gold Coast program, we can be getting this information out a whole lot better. Also sharing the results of what we're actually achieving, having volunteers being able to see their images, what they've done on the weekend, and being able to share that with their friends and being able to get that out to a really quick audience very quickly without having to wait to use other platforms or paperwork to be signed and things like that as well. So it's something that we do really want to progress, and we know it's a missing link with our program, and it works for a lot of other councils that are doing similar. So
yeah, so I think we should definitely look into that space, because it's clearly a huge investment that we're making, and it's almost, and it's not just the state members who are getting into it, but it's the criticism the city receives for apparently not doing anything in this space, where you started the conversation by saying we're world leading, and I think sometimes the excitement of some groups about attacking the city for doing an approval on the coast, they just lose sight of the volume of work and effort that's gone into a whole lot of the natural estate.
Yeah, it is definitely a missing link, and it's something that we've raised multiple times, and something that we'd love to be able to take this program forward, but also being able to promote the other positive work that our not just our natural areas team do, but other teams across the city. So it is absolutely phenomenal. We are missing out on a really great opportunity, and it would be great to showcase that to the public, but also other state members, that this is fantastic work that's occurring.
Through the chair, just quickly, I'll take that as an action then. We'll try and progress that, taking on board those comments around the city's funding.
Yeah, thanks, Director, for that support, and Councillor Jones, I think you make a really good point. I think to put it beyond doubt, and I don't want to preempt endorsement of the recommendation, but I think we're all there. Perhaps we can give some strength to it from a committee level in support of the director's undertaking, and also Soraya's ask between the lines. We might contemplate a third that would read that the review have regard to developing a communication plan to acknowledge the city's funding of the program and to showcase the results of the initiatives it supports to secure good environmental outcomes. So this work's going to take place anyway as part of 2, but we want to make sure that we're dealing with those communication issues.
Yep.
And maybe an outcome is support for that Facebook
Yep.
page that you're looking for. But to Councillor Owen Jones's point, I think it's really important that when we're spending the green stuff on the green stuff,
Yep.
that the Greens know we're spending the green stuff on the green stuff.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Tozer, then Councillor Gates. Just going in order of hands up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Soraya, for your presentation. You know how valued you are in my division. And we had this conversation before the meeting started, exactly what Councillor Owen Jones said, that the city's not acknowledged and you guys aren't acknowledged enough. In the meantime, before you get your Facebook page up and running, can I suggest that you maybe send some stuff through to the divisional councils so they can post it on their Facebook? I also noticed in my division a lot of the tree planting does fall to valley residents because it's mainly in the valley areas, but we really need to get that information out to the broader, broader area, because I'm sure we get a lot more people interested. And I know that you're doing that well in the school holidays. The school holiday programs seem to get out to the broader region, but I think with the tree planting, it seems to be mainly valley residents in my area, and we need to get on top of that. And I'm totally supportive of this. Thank you.
Councillor Tozer, then Councillor Gates. Was there anyone else? Then Councillor Hamill.
Super supportive of the idea that there be a unique identity for the Naturally GC program on social media platforms. I'm very aware that the next generation that we're seeing in our area maybe don't use Facebook very much, so it would need to have regard for other social media assets that aren't Facebook, particularly as a younger generation get involved in planting trees. I know that out at Firth Park, when we do our tree planting, there's just a bunch of young people getting involved, and barely any of them. Well, I don't know. I don't use TikTok, so I don't know. But I don't know which social media platform's the right social media platform. But my observation, at least in my division, is that these activities are attracting very much a younger generation of people who want to take action in this space. And if we're to be serious about it, we're going to need to make sure not just relating to the older generation, but what new and young participants and advocates are doing. Part two is I'm interested in some sort of project, like micro projects. So in and throughout Division 9, we have some issues with non-declared weed pests where, you know, as you might imagine, weeds don't care about property boundaries. They tend to generate on an unkempt private property and then go on to the reserve. We have a number of big projects through maybe the NCAP partnerships and bigger projects where there might be tens of thousands of dollars or $5,000 allocated to a project. But there's lots of small weed management projects that are either on roadside verges, private properties, ex-farming properties that don't really have a land care interest. But I'd love to see Naturally GC develop over this 12-month review some sort of micro project. So I don't know, within that $200 worth of resources, maybe up to $1,500 or $2,000 worth of resources, where a mobilised group of community members who are maybe not a land care group, maybe a community association, could execute with some public funding without necessarily having to incorporate. Yeah. The challenge is most of the time when we allocate a funding solution, we have to allocate it to an incorporated association or something. But if there's a way we could do some sort of micro activity, particularly like a tactical intervention of a small weed project. And the kind of weeds that I'm talking about are things like giant devil's fig. They're not declared. People hate them. They are prolific in the hinterland. Council officers say, well, they're not declared, so we can't go and deal with it. We can't issue a notice to the property owner to do it. But there's actually a bunch of mobilised people who want to do it, and I'd love to be able to provide some kind of community resources for it, because as soon as we don't do anything about it, you know, those weeds just go into our reserves and then we end up having to clean it up anyway. Yeah. So if that review could have regard to those, that some sort of model for a micro project, you know, without the necessity of that community association or an incorporated association allocation, that'd be really helpful. Yeah, the last one, I suppose, I just want to follow on from Soraya's public acknowledgement of Wal's work in Austinville. Wal doesn't just provide resources to his land care group, but he provides resources to a number of land care groups all around the city. What he won was the National Individual Land Carer of the Year award. So out of the whole of Australia, he was the land carer who was acknowledged most prominently this year, and I think that's a testament not just to his work in Austinville, but his resourcing of other land care groups across the Gold Coast. And he is so highly regarded and works so hard to help people. Even just the other day, he was on the boundary of Mudgerbah Creek at the Mudgerbah Caravan Park, which we've spent the last 12 months kind of cleaning up, already starting to regenerate and give some advice to effectively a commercial provider about how to restore those creek and the riparian zone next to that creek. And that's you know, he just did that willingly without any fee, and that's I think that's super. So he does a lot of that. So if you have a chance to come out, you know, if people were interested in that program, I'd love to have you guys out to Austinville. I know he'd be really pleased to show you some of the work on ground. The last one I have is I'd love to see the presentation electronic, those 2005, 2022 aerial footages. I'd love to be able to share those in my community to show that work.
So Director, would it be possible to get a copy of that presentation, or at least the slides of that presentation after committee? Yeah, great. Thank you. Councillor Gates.
Chairman, I was just going to make a suggestion that you add that the city's 100% funding in the recommendation, if you were agreeable, just to indicate that.
I'm happy to do that. I suppose there may be, I know there are some circumstances where the state or feds have ticked in a little bit of money and we've still carried the majority. Still think we need to
take it out, it's fine. I just thought that would push home the point. Yeah. And I also wanted to add...
Let's say majority funding. How about that? Super majority funding? Let's go with majority funding, but it's a point well made. We need to claim ownership.
Thank you. And I just wanted to support Councillor Tozer's suggestion that, I'll explain. Councillor Bowden Lumsden, the Mayor, and I went to the opening of Business Week, and Mike McQueen was the guest presenter, and he very tactfully reminded most of us there that if Facebook and Instagram were our social media platform, then we were very much outdated and that the young people only use TikTok. And he had some figures about the numbers of hours every week that young people are actually engaged with TikTok, and it was quite astonishing. So he just reminded us, those of us who thought that we were sort of pretty cool with Facebook and Instagram, that's not the case.
Facebook came after MySpace, Bob.
Might be more familiar with Bebo,
And
which
that
is
was
the
simply
parallel
a comment.
UK version. Councillor Hamill.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just interested. So in the report, it talks about that the review is going to start within 3 months, and then we've got on the recommendation for something to come back to us within 12 months. Tom, I was wondering if there was any indication of, like, do we need the full 12 months? Could we get it back sooner? Only knowing that not getting it back sooner, we missed the chance to look at next year's budget period for what might happen with some of this work.
So, thanks, Councillor Hamill. I had precisely the same questions of the director and of Tony when we caught up prior to the meeting. The purpose of the 12 months is to collect I suppose the data from all events over the next 12 months to be able to make some informed recommendations. So we're likely to see some changes recommended ahead of the next budget cycle, but the evidence base that we will need for a full rejig potentially of the operating model or for a resourcing ask could only come within 12 months, which is, so I raised your exact same point. If that's changed, Director, between our meeting and now, I'm happy to entertain a change to the recommendation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the reality is to hit next budget, you've only got about 3 months left now as we go into budget build. So we will put something up in the next budget, which is a step along the way. But I think it's prudent to, as the Chair has said, to get a really good, solid data set to put before you all.
I'm happy to say that to endorse a fully completed and updated program, 12 months I get, and for the budget request after that. But it feels like there would be a mid-term step of some resource adjustments that could happen next year's budget at least, hopefully.
Yeah, so absolutely, Councillor Hamill. So again, to give you some confidence and peace of mind, I had that discussion with the Director, and as he's just said, there will be an ask at budget, which is well within the 12 months, and then in 12 months' time, we've got an opportunity for a wholesale review. So there will be that intermediary step, because I think we all love trees.
Well,
we all love trees.
Greenest council in the nation, I've heard.
Some say.
So,
Councillor Hamill, further question?
Mr. Chairman, so it's something that I've had a couple of NAMU officers, Michael behind me being one of them, out to a couple of sites in my area, that the current programs sit inside the conservation estates, and that depending on which division you represent, that you sometimes have estates or rural resi estates where corridors through those areas would be natural connections between conservation estates or different pockets, but it's not really something that is part of the program right now purely because of a resourcing point of view. So just to flag that it would be good to see, from my point of view, in an updated program, that some of our park and corridors that go through residential estates that would be natural corridors could form part of a future program as well to connect the conservation estates and pockets together better.
Councillor Hamill, I think that's a great point you make. I think there's a bit of work to be done around the mapping layers of what constitutes NAMU and what's not. I'll just make the inverse point to you. I support your point, but in my experience around areas like Azura Island, for example, we've got these pockets of NAMU area sitting around a playground, and one half of the playground is mapped as park, so we get a good standard of amenity. The other half is NAMU, maybe because of a historic development decision, and we end up with this quite a jarring level of amenity. And I just wonder whether we need a mechanism moving forward, not as part of today's decision, where we can look at the appropriateness of the mapping for these smaller NAMU areas, and maybe those need to be incorporated into an adjacent park area, freeing up potentially some more NAMU funding for other worthwhile linkage projects. I think if that kind of makes sense. Saray, you might have a different view through you to the Director. But just sometimes we're dealing with maybe 100 square metres of NAMU space surrounded by park. because of a historical development decision, and it's maybe not the best outcome next to a playground. I know I'm making you grimace there. And so my last question, could you just walk us through that Hoppo partnership, because that sounds great. It's almost like a poor man's whale watching.
So this weekend we're actually hosting the first Hoppo tour. So we've partnered with them. They've approached us and said, hey, would you like to use our vessel to go out on the Broadwater and do environmental tours? So they're actually going off their normal course and they're running a 1 hour and a half tour of the Broadwater. We've partnered with local organisations, Ocean Connect, and then also a couple of our local expert bird watchers that are going to be delivering these activities. So yeah, we've got at least 40 people coming this weekend, and they're going to learn all about how important the Broadwater is as well, not just the land, but also the water and the dugongs and the stingrays and the turtles and the seagrass beds as well. So
awesome.
Really fantastic partnership, and one we're excited to deliver.
And while I don't begrudge them for doing this, absolutely, because they need to stay afloat, excuse the pun. I'm assuming that there's a charge for people to participate in that?
No, so all of our Naturally GC activities, they are free for people. So that's what's so important about these as well. So even through the school holidays, people can bring along their children and come out to workshops, and they're delivered for free. So that's through the city funding and divisional funding that we make these opportunities possible. So all of our activities that we deliver are free for the community.
Oh, including this Hoppo tour this weekend?
Including the Hoppo tour this weekend. So yeah, everything is, and that's why I was saying it's so important to really promote this and showcase it on a higher level, to showcase what we are actually doing and how we do compared to other councils. There's nothing like these programs delivered anywhere else.
So good. Well, look, councillors, I'm happy to move the recommendation. You have a question? Yep.
Two things. One follows on from Councillor Owen Jones's point relating to other levels of government, and there was a news story, I think, last Tuesday night about some tree planting that happened at the Botanical Gardens. Was that a council-funded event?
If it was at the Botanic Gardens, I'm assuming it would have been through that, and I think I'm aware of the activity that,
I think it was the federal government, if you remember, they decided to fund some Queen Jubilee tree planting in the lead up to the last federal election.
Worked out.
It was just, I found it a little bit jarring, considering that we had spent so much time and effort just in literally the week before that, talking about the Botanical Gardens and how much we were prepared to invest and showcase it, and then there was a tree planting occurred and there was clearly no one from council was there, and the TV coverage was dominated by the federal member. So, but that's okay, it might have been different. Yeah, that's right. And then the second thing, which I just mentioned to Soraya earlier, and the director will know about this, but the Our Beaches program, now, I don't know what Councillor Barton-Lumsden's experience has been, but obviously that's in its very early days of council running that program. I think my early observation is we're struggling to get traction with that new program, and I don't know whether you've felt that as well, but I just wondered whether, for the amount of June planting type activities we're doing, whether it shouldn't be perhaps co-located in terms of that efficiency. Soraya's like, I don't need any more work to do, but I just purely a suggestion as to whether it could be.
Are you saying outcomes deal?
Through the chair, if I can probably make a comment about that. Look, I'm aware of a couple of examples where they have, and it's only a couple, where they've struggled with registrations. People have registered and then not turned up on the day, but there's only a couple. Most of the June restoration activities are actually heavily oversubscribed, and the majority of occurrences actually have more people turn up than have registered. But there's these couple of, I'm not sure what was on that weekend that caused people to do something else. Late cancellations, but quite specific on a couple of weekends, which is really different to the rest of the program. But we're always happy to integrate and to look for efficiencies. We can look at this as part of the One City program. Where is this best located? So very open.
Even if there was just a little bit of cross-promotion across the channels to try and get people who might have been doing hinterland tree planting down to the beach to understand that Junal planting is also important.
Excellent
and it's a different type of vegetation and etc. But we can actually start to cross those things over a little bit more.
Yeah, great contribution. Councillors, I'm happy to move that recommendation if there's a seconder. Councillor Tozer, someone like to speak? to it. Councillor Young.
Thanks, Chairman. Through you, Soraya, thanks very much for waving the flag and being that public face for Naturally GC. You've done a great job and continue to do that. And of course, recognise all the rest of the team. I think one of the problems that I've expressed to you is the ability to reach out to the people with your information, and I'm not that savvy with social media and find that a bit of a challenge. And
especially finding the right words.
Right. Moving on. And I found that with the Eventbrite sort of links, people are a bit wary because there's not a lot of information up front as to where, let's say it's a tree planting, where it might be and time, that sort of stuff. And so people are a bit scared to take that step and go into the link before they know those things. So that may just food for thought. The response I've had from MAMU in regard to community concerns questions has always been exceptional, and I really appreciate that assistance. Okay. Yeah, it's great because there's a lot of recognition in the community and regard for the environment. There's a lot of aspiration, and I think we're meeting a need there, and so it's naturally a very good thing that you're involved in, and very happy to support it, although I won't be able to vote today.
Okay.
Thank you.
We all have a conflict because we all love trees so much. Is that it, Hamill?
It's a special relationship.
Mr. Chairman, so not to speak so much to the recommendation, but
Why would you speak?
because I can and I will. I wanted to say to Soraya and to Michael behind me here that in the 2.5 years since coming to this role, you get to meet a lot of different officers and officers of all different levels, and sometimes those officers are really keen to get on board and try and deliver outcomes and are really proactive, and sometimes they're not. Soraya and Michael and the whole NAMU team very much fit into the very, very proactive side of things. I have really, really enjoyed getting to know all these officers and getting to be part of the community element that comes with their programs. And just to say on the record that you do a fantastic job, and that when community groups in my area talk about the program and the ones that are involved, absolutely love it. You and all the officers in the NAMU team are a credit to the city, and I hope from this program getting a rejig in the future that it provides a chance for more people to understand just how excellent you are as officers and how excellent this program is. So well done, and sincerely thank you. You're an excellent officer and a credit to the city.
Thank you.
Well said there, Councillor Hamill. Well done, Director. Ooh. Look, councillors, just in closing, before we put this to a vote, I just want to look very optimistically at the future, and in particular the opportunity that we have at the Green Heart. The Green Heart gives us an opportunity to plant over 500,000 trees. 500,000 trees in the central part of the Gold Coast, and I'd hope through that process there's an opportunity for the community to get their hands dirty in creating that precinct. Just looking at the Currumbin Creek before and after images makes me very excited about what can be done along the Mudgeeraba Creek. Now, I'm sure Councillor Tozer and Councillor Castro will be equally excited about what that might do in terms of not only stabilising the creek and making it more resilient, but what it means in terms of water quality downstream. So I think we need to take a fresh look at Naturally GC to rise to the opportunity that we have with the Green Heart. So it's the right time to be doing this. And thanks to all officers involved in the drafting of the report. I'll put that to a vote, councillors. All those in favour? All those against? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before I head off, I really want to thank you guys again for supporting the programs and sharing that information and getting involved, getting your hands dirty, coming out to our tree planting days. It's absolutely fantastic, and it just makes me so proud to see the city supporting these programs. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. All right, councillors, we now turn to our last item for today, item 7.1. It's the Country Paradise Parklands Draft Strategic Direction Report. We have our presenter, Scott Kruger. Now, does Scott have a question? That's, sorry? Is what's closed? So councillors, no video. We'll take interpretive dance. Look, councillors, the Country Paradise Parklands Draft Strategic Direction Report is a closed item. I've spoken with the director, and the only real closed or confidential information is the financial information, because it will impact our budget deliberations moving forward. So I just wanted to test the appetite around whether there are questions, and if there are questions, will those questions be non-financial? Did anyone have questions? No one had questions? Right. No worries. I'm just testing to see whether we will move into, whether any questions will move us into closed. Councillor Young, did you have questions that might touch on financial matters?
Only in the very broader sense, not even mentioning figures. It's just more about timing, Chairman. Thank you.
So from a councillor perspective, we will not necessarily need to trigger a move into close, but through you, Director, to Scott, does your presentation include any financial information?
Through the chair, no, it doesn't.
Okay. Councillor Young, are you comfortable from a stakeholder management point of view having this in open?
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, great. So again, councillors, just to make clear, we are dealing with grey pages. If there are questions around financial information, just grab my attention. We will then move into close, but we can keep the meeting in open. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start, can I just ask, just get an indication of how many people have actually been out to Country Paradise Parklands? Probably half. That's good.
Yeah, it's a movie
just
role.
Helps me with my background, how much background I need to discuss. So, for those councillors who haven't been out, Country Paradise Parklands is located west of Nerang Township, about 5 minutes outside. It is a district park, that was indicated before, and we picked this park up back in 2011. It previously was a rural theme park, I guess you could call it, and old buildings, a nice country feel, and in 2012 council endorsed a management model that looked after the right-hand side of the image that you've got up on here. That management model was having Nerang Country Paradise Association manage the park pretty much on behalf of council, and look to implement a concept plan that was also endorsed by council. Last year, we picked up, early this year, we picked up number 6, which has actually taken the parkland from 13 hectares to 18 hectares. So there's a very good opportunity for us to actually develop this district park into a park of regional significance. It is, it was basically a rural property that had a house and a pool and sheds and a bunch of other stuff on there. So there's a fair bit of work that needs to be done in that space to blend it together. Something else that I really want to articulate is that at the bottom of the park, it has Crane Creek, and that creek floods. When it floods, it really floods this property. The property is actually, half of it is quite flat, and then it goes up the hill towards the back end. So where all the buildings are that you can sort of see down the bottom there, most of them get flooded, and it's fairly high velocity as well. There's fairly strong velocity flows through there, so it impacts that part of the parkland as well. So to give you a feel of the park, we've got, a rural character and brand. There's strong community ownership out there. There's a number of community groups, really fantastic community groups, and most of them have their hands in the dirt or they're building things. It's a really cool local community feel out there, and the activities that go on there really bring people together. I think it's an amazing space. and it's certainly unique, I feel, in terms of what we've got here in the city. Visitation to the parklands is very high. There's a number of different events that happen there. They've got a couple of venues. There's a wedding chapel, so there's opportunities for that to occur as well, and a bunch of other functions that occur through the year, like Botanical Bazaar, which was on last month. High visitation to that space. Oops. Let me just go back here. At the start of this year, we actually put in an application to Parks and Leisure Australia. I think that you would have seen it through council. I think Sam got up and received some presentation in regards to this, and Country Paradise Parklands, their play space above $500,000, received the State Award, and we're also going for the National Award in October. So this play space is just, it's super cool. And it actually has brought a different, I guess, type of person to the parklands. You know, families, mums and dads with bubs, kids during the week. It's really fantastic. It's a rural type setting. And I think that it's also something where people just don't turn up for half an hour and experience the playground. They really stay for 1 to 2 hours. It's a really good spot. In terms of tenure, we have 8 organisations on site. That's through a licence agreement. So currently we normally have lease agreements with community organisations. The licence agreements have been put in place because realistically the facilities aren't up to scratch to be able to actually get them to look after those facilities properly. We have the Nerang Country Paradise Association, who I said before has a management agreement over the park, and there's a bunch of other numerous community organisations that utilise the park outside of that with hire agreements, and they provide some excellent service to the community. In terms of assets, I've said before that they're old country buildings. There's 660 assets on site, and that's actually only talking about the assets that we currently have within the older section, so expect there to be more. The condition of the buildings that we currently have are quite poor. They're fair to poor. We have 3 buildings that we basically have said that they don't really have too much long to live. That this picture here that we have here is actually the main building's flooring. It's recently just come up that it's completely soaked through the flooding that's occurred over a number of years and requires significant renewal.
That round post is just coming good now. What are you talking about?
It looks good from afar.
That baling twine's got a decade in it at least.
That's right. That actually
now you
right
have me
next to
stumped.
That, right next to that, there's 2 6x4s holding that up. So very interesting. So with those tenure scenarios, with the asset management issues and challenges that we have on site, we asked a local consultant to come along and provide us with a strategic direction report. First of all, it's looking at the vision of the parklands, and you can see below in the green writing, it's delivering that parkland of significant of regional significance and co-managing the public areas, because from our perspective, the number of community organisations that are on site, we don't want to lose that involvement and improvement that they've undertaken through this space. I think that that's really important and we need to keep that going. We have noticed that there is opportunity to improve the level of investment within this parkland, not only to get it up to a parkland of regional significance, but there's certainly a lot of asset management issues that we've got or challenges that we have, and identify the most appropriate management model. So the management model that we had in 2012 or started off with in 2012 probably isn't the right management model that we need moving forward to deliver a parkland of regional significance. The key findings that came out of that is the roles and responsibilities of the city and NCPA, which is Nerang Country Paradise Association, are unclear and need refining. We need to make sure that we're getting that right. The concept plan that we endorsed in 2012 really hasn't progressed, and that was under the stewardship of NCPA, a community organisation, and realistically, the city hasn't probably put in appropriate funding over the last 10 years to get this up to appropriate standard. And we've already spoken about the management model changes. So as part of the strategic direction report, we had the concept plan delivered. You can see that there's some really a strong focus on integrating the two sections, so the old section and the one that we've just acquired. There's also a road that will go through that to try and link it up, but we also have a great walk which will be developed around the parkland. There's two other areas of significance that I want to point out. One's on the northwest, or the top right-hand side. That's a horticultural hub, and that's something that's really strong within what's currently happening here. But secondly, over to the left-hand side on the northwest, that sort of orangey blob. Yep, that one there, thank you. That's also for a community hub space. So it's trying to deliver additional community support. In that space, it's quite flat, even though it's up at the higher levels of the parkland. So through the SDR, we have developed up a 15-year plan of works. The first 5 years really focuses on that renewal concept. It's looking at developing the Great Walk as well, but really focusing on what we need to do from a renewal perspective. The medium term and long term focuses on that infrastructure development for the parklands. Now, we've done this strategically because we know that we have come to you previously with some significant asks within the Parks and Recreational Services area, focusing on areas like Pizzey Park, Botanic Gardens, and also some acquisitions further up, plus Greenheart. I was getting to that. Plus Greenheart, which is going to have 500,000 trees put into there. 500,000 trees.
I hadn't heard that. That's only 100,000 less than
16 sporting fields, though. So the management model, there were 4 options that were put up. One is the current model. The second one is a revised partner model, which focuses on trying to get the city looking at the operations and maintenance within that space and allowing the community groups to actually focus on activating the space rather than focusing on trying to renew, maintain what's currently there.
Absolutely, Councillor Gates. Well, does it concern the slide? Well, the slide is everything because there's all the dot points. But
Sorry, it just concerns the model, which is being spoken to. I just wondered, has the NCPA been responsible for maintenance in the same way that sporting clubs are for their leased facility? And if so, have we a record of how much funding has been contributed, if any, to maintenance of these structures over the last 11 years?
Through the chair, there has been, because they're on licences and because the buildings weren't up to probably appropriate standard to hand them over from a lease perspective, NCPA have been doing maintenance works and so has council. So there obviously has been significant funding that has been going through, but it certainly hasn't been enough to get them up to appropriate standard to turn those areas into lease areas. That's the reason why that they are currently licenses, and NCPA has a management over the site, but there's 8 organisations that have licence areas as well. So it's something that's one of the things that we really need to improve on.
So did the overarching NCPA management require maintenance of the licensed areas?
No.
No. Okay, thank you.
So the other
Thanks,
two
Chairman.
management models that were put up was contracted management, so putting this out to a contractor to manage the whole parklands. And the last one was total council management. These were the four. The one that was recommended and the one that council officers recommend also is the revised partner model, because this enables the city to do what they do well in terms of maintaining and managing the operations space and also the facilities, with the focus on trying to get these two lease areas, and enables the community groups who do an excellent job in activation to just focus on activation and improve the opportunities within the parklands.
No, I just wondered if I might contribute to the answer to Councillor Gates' legitimate question. Thanks, Chairman. When the site was inherited by or purchased by council, the buildings were in very degraded, dilapidated state, and the committee has engaged Skilling Queensland on a number of occasions and partly funded the works that they've undertaken, which has been to the benefit of the city of hundreds of thousands of dollars in replacing flooring and walls, replacing air conditioners, all sorts of work about white ant damage. I mean, it's been very, very significant in all of the buildings. And as well as that, in the outside of, like in the green space, they've contributed countless hours in maintaining the green space and planting trees. 150,000 trees have been planted there. So there's been a hell of a lot of work by the committee in establishing or maintaining the buildings and bringing them up to a reasonable standard, but never to the point where we really need to get a case in point. Recently, they secured money from the state for solar panels, which have now been installed on top of the big barn, which is one of those central buildings. So they've been acquiring money however they can. There's been some that's come through divisional allocation, some through the city, but some through their own enterprise, and altogether the input to the park over the past decade is in many hundreds of thousands of dollars. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. And I just have a question through you to the officers of whether there's been a scoping exercise to see the approximate costs that will be required in order to get these facilities to a state where they can be leased.
Through the chair.
Withholding
Because
financial
it seems
information.
like a really small amount of money that we're considering today, but that's just the very start of the journey, I'm sure. And I'd like to know what we're taking on.
Through you, Madam Chair, I might just, sorry, Mr Chair.
No, I was going to say that work has been carried out.
Yes.
It's quite sizable in the very later years. It's quite detailed. And I think the intention is to bring forward that report in early 2023, but there might be some early information that the director can supply.
Thank you, Mr Chair. So exactly right, the work has been undertaken. In the report, it notes that there's more work that needs to be assessed, so that new block of land that we've recently acquired, we really need to understand the full impact and then, I guess, the full financial impact of what that might look like for council, and we'll bring that back in a report, as the Chair has said, early next year, to say here's what we think is the management plan for the next 15 years or 10 years. This is the money that needs to be spent and why.
Okay, and just one other question, if you don't mind, while I've got the mic. Is there sensitive veg there on that recently acquired land?
Through the chair, yes. So NAMU is looking after this dark green area and will locate up through. So you can see that there's a local creek line and Crane Creek that's indicated there. So they'll be looking after those sections. And they currently look after now the section through Crane Creek and get support through an organisation called River Keepers, who are based on site as well.
So is it, sorry, I've just been shown the financial model, which is incredibly significant. Is there a likelihood of tree removal of that other part that's not green?
Through the chair, yes, there will be sections that's been undertaken at present as well.
Okay, thank you.
If you could remind me, Councillor Gates, just to grab you after the meeting, to have a chat about that attachment. Councillors, any further questions? Do we have further slides there, Scott?
That is all. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, councillors. There are no further questions. I did have a discussion with Councillor Young and the Director, Director Twine, earlier concerning the recommendation. I just wonder, in order to bring to a head the financial issues, whether if we could just scroll down to the officer recommendation, that we perhaps modify to say that a further report be brought to council no later than early 2023. Just gives us an opportunity to consider the financial impact of the decision as early as possible and provide a signal to the community that we'll bring this to a head. That little tweak won't burden city officers, but it will send a signal to the community that we want to land on a position as quickly as possible, and notably we're not landing on that today with respect to the funding ask. Councillor Hamill, then Councillor Tozer.
Mr Chair, I have been to the Parklands, but wasn't familiar with just how many groups and how many things happening on the site, and I think you've only just probably scratched the surface today based off my discussions with Councillor Young about everything that happens out there. I'm just a bit interested that in looking at option 2 and the proposed amount of staffing allocation that comes with that, like that seems like a very few hours of staff time to take on such a big site with that many assets and that many groups and whatnot. Has option 2 actually got enough staff time in it, enough hours to be able to do this job properly? It seems very light on.
Scott?
Through the chair, currently that's actually providing half resource to run the operation part of it. We will still have the community groups running the activation side. There will be support also from a level 8 to run the strategic part of the plan moving into the 15 years, and we do believe that it's appropriate.
Right, so that's maybe not a reflection of new resourcing, that is just new resourcing proposed, but will be assisted by other stuff. So I think that would be good in future detail on this to actually understand the full resourcing aspect of it, of what other groups have to be involved and what hours that takes.
Yeah, good point, Councillor Hamill. And the way that I'm approaching this is we've decoupled the investment and embellishment decisions from the operating model decision. So it seems like a modest ask in comparison to the full plan, if council were to support it in its entirety, but it's as much as the city officers need and have been comfortable asking for. Councillor Tozer, question?
Did you, when you changed the words to no later than early 2023, did you do that with a view to ensuring that we could consider it as part of the Special Budget Committee's preparation for the following year's budget, or how did you? I would like that, and I wondered whether you might mind saying by April.
Look,
just so it can be considered in May.
To answer your question, no, that didn't enter my mind. For me, it was more about sending a signal to the community, almost like the regional botanic gardens, that we were serious about landing on a position. I didn't presume to involve the next round of budgets or intervene in the budget build, which I think happens a bit earlier than in early 2023. But it could be that, and I'll leave it up to the director, that there is an ask, but it might also be too early, Councillor Tozer, so I'll take the director's advice.
Through you, Mr Chair, we'll do our very best. Given that we have a lot of information already, we need to assess really this new land and do a little bit of work. We can make our best efforts, given the relative maturity of this one compared to the previous one, that we might be able to feed into the budget process.
So there were 4 options in the report that I won't talk about, but officers have recommended option 2 in preparation for next year's budget. Is option 2 what we're looking?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So it's fair to say that at least option 2, with some potential for, pending this report, some capital investment, which is yet to be confirmed by council and would need to be reviewed subsequent to that report. That's okay. Cool. That's fine. Awesome.
Because further condition assessment might necessitate the needing of capital to be brought forward.
Absolutely, got that.
Absolutely. Yep. Councillor Hamill?
Sorry, Mr Chair. I'm very interested in this one because I have a not dissimilar site up my end of the city that I think a piece of work like this in the future will will come forward as well. But I'm just interested, maybe through you to Councillor Peter Young, is that do you see an opportunity that through this work and through the proposed staffing increase to start with and what's going to come out in the bigger plan, that there'll be a chance to activate the parklands even more and see more community groups on the site, that it will have more of an activation and utilisation in your area?
Respond, Chair. Thanks. If I might just preface the response by saying that the officer in council responsible for Country Paradise at the moment deals with dozens of parklands, and this is just one. And so it's always been a point of congestion, if you like, for all the issues at Country Paradise to go through this one officer, and it's really retarded the ability to progress things, like to get a building fixed, to get a window fixed. We've got leaking roofs, all that sort of jazz, and the ability to expand that pipeline, so to speak, by virtue of this increased staffing allocation will be a fantastic blockage opener. It's really going to help considerably. I support the recommendation. In terms of the utilisation of the parkland, I think it will improve it. It won't necessarily radically improve the number of events that are held there or the number of groups that might be able to be accommodated there, but it will improve the sustainability of the whole parkland, because at the moment it's very frustrated. For example, the first 3 months of next year, they're going to have to close the main building, which is a revenue generator, because of the flooring that we saw the photograph of, because of the inundation of the parkland over many years. Like, it would flood a couple of times a year, that building, and the floor has just got completely wet underneath and it's just collapsing. So there's 3 months out. Now, we could improve that and have a better sustainability in terms of income generation and activation of the space for the public benefit by both fixing the flooring and trying to prevent that future flooding. I'm not sure if that responds to your question.
It does. I think your example before of the fact that, and it is very similar to the one I'm referring to, that it all goes through the one set of officers who are, in my opinion, stretched too far already, and that these sites are very unique in themselves, and that having a dedicated resource that can be more responsive and can hopefully see the existing groups flourish further and grow, but with more land and these buildings coming up to a better condition, that we might see more community groups go in, because they do provide excellent spaces that our community centres don't necessarily provide. They are a point of difference, and they suit groups better than community centres sometimes do. So just keen to hear that we have a risk mitigation point of it, that with assets there we have to be over that, but it's more than that for me. Yes, mitigate the risk and deal with asset condition and all that stuff, but that there has to be a focus in the future work on making sure that it is getting more community use and that we don't lose that focus, because that appears to be what it was built on.
Through your chair. So there's two aspects. One is the management, and that will be improved by virtue of the additional resource we're talking about in the report, and that will facilitate the more expedient fixing of issues, fixing of buildings to make it operate a lot better, and it will improve the capacity of the association to manage the site much better. But the key issue ultimately is going to be the investment that we make into the physical infrastructure, because I mentioned that rotting flooring. On the Oval, there's a big shed. We saw a photograph of one of the posts. Now, the officers want to get rid of that big shed and have wanted to do so for the last 12 years. And the community is desperately trying to hang on to that, because it provides much needed shade and storage for some community groups. So we don't have any budget to replace it. It will have to come out because of the public danger that it presents. So the other aspect of this really is the future investment, which has been really lacking in the last decade, and into that sort of infrastructure. So we've just purchased that site next door. Only $200,000 was allocated to make good. That is, to remove the buildings on there and to remove rubbish and to remove a little bit of vegetation. So not a lot of money by comparison. We allocated double that amount for the Ashmore site that we purchased, that we agreed to purchase last week, just for that initial remediation. So the 200,000 that was left over from the purchase, it just isn't a lot of money, and it's not going to get us a long way. So that report that'll come to us early next year is critical in how we deal with that and how we look at this, just as we look at all other parklands. It's an investment that's going to realise a real public benefit. The park is just scraping along on the smell of an oily rag, to mix up metaphors. It really has been managed very well given the circumstances. I take my hat off to the committee present and past. They've done a lot of work, they really have, and the facility is really very well loved by the community. People are just so engaged with it, they love it, and it's all about the character, and so we've been lucky to have the old buildings that have been able to be preserved. We've had that public investment into the park, into the playground, which mimics the country feel and has presented a really good opportunity for the city. And that's the kind of example, you know, if we didn't have that playground, the utilisation of the park would be a lot less than it is now. That's really opened it up, as Scott said, to a whole new audience who are appreciating not only the playground but the other aspects of the park. We need to bring the standard of those buildings up to scratch so that they're not an ongoing drain on everyone's resource. Thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Young, and really value your input of someone who's connected with the area, and as the divisional councillor, I think you're best placed to provide us with some advice. Before coming to Councillor Gates, Director, when that report does come in by early 2023, would it be fair to say that we could expect the low-hanging fruit to be prioritised?
Yes, Mr Chair, through you to the councillors, absolutely. That is part of the process we'll have to apply to this and other similar parks. So you mentioned one in your division, Councillor Hamill. There are a bunch of these assets across the city that we need to have a good hard look at and to prioritise what needs to be done in these circumstances where there are assets that are failing and there's opportunities that can be realised.
Right. Councillor Gates. Yeah, great. Move Councillor Gates. So I have a seconder. I'm going to give it a council. Oh, who hasn't had one on the board today? Councillor O'Neill. Seconded, Councillor O'Neill. From the chair's perspective, I think this is going to enjoy some broad support here, Councillor Young. But Councillor Gates, would you like to open?
I would, Chairman, because I was just speaking with Councillor Young before, and I recall he took me to this site before Council purchased it in 2011 because it was a contentious purchase at the time, and it was a divided council, you might say, at that particular time. And so we had to really work hard on our craft to get each other's support for different projects. And I'd have to credit Councillor Young with doing just that in taking me to this site. And it was a revelation to me when I went there, and I was really happy to support the purchase. I've only been there a couple of times since then, but I do recall recently, or a couple of years back, going there for a celebration for the SES at the end of one of our disaster periods, and that big shed, it was just amazing. And I mean, there were movie nights under that big shed, so inclement weather never ever impacted on our movie nights, which it does for most of us because we just don't have access to a facility like Country Paradise Parkland. So more than happy today to support this with a view to looking forward to the next opportunity to actually make this one of our really great facilities within the city.
What a great outcome. Councillors, were there any speakers against the motion? Councillor Young, would you like to add some further comments?
That's very kind of you. Thanks, Chairman. I'll be brief. But I would like to recognise the support that the community enjoyed through Councillor Gates' vote in support of acquiring the site in 2011. Also, Councillor LaCastra, who I remember lobbying. That kind of support was critical at the time, and the results speak for themselves. It's a beautiful, unique parkland. It is absolutely wonderful, and I appreciate the opportunity for us to be discussing this today and look forward to the outcome. Thanks, Chairman.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Gates, did you wish to close? Great. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And given that a declaration was made, I'm just going to call a division on the vote. Councillor Gates, Councillor Councillor Belden Lumsden, Councillor LaCastro, Councillor Tozer, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Vorster. Those against? No. And if we could just record that Councillor Young did not vote, even though he's not a member. An abundance of caution. Wonderful, great outcome. Councillors, any general business items today?
Surely you've got
No, I've got nothing today. I'm on my best behaviour. Councillors, I'll close the meeting at 10:47. Thank you.